So I will introduce myself once more. My name is Mirjana Volarev. I come from Serbia, Belgrade, for the Center for the Promotion of Science. And we will be the next ones to organize the second edition of festival in Belgrade in Serbia next year. So I would like to start with emphasizing what a great work has CMCC done, an impeccable organization in taking the lead of organizing this first edition. We had a really diverse, yes. Give it up for CMCC, thanks. So yes, we had a very diverse content in the topics. We had the water management challenges, the urban challenges. Also, we had a communication of climate knowledge and climate change. We also had the key insights of climate Europe 2, and of course, the mission adaptation. And we had a diversity of audiences too, the different sectors. You brought your expertise, your knowledge. We learned from you. Say that this was really extremely fun and amazing. So we as Superman are very excited to take the lead on the next event, the second inside event in Belgrade. We want to bring us much innovation and diversity in the sectors, from public private businesses, as you saw, and NGOs, but also general public too. Center has the and knowledge via art. So we like to spread this message to everyone and involve to audiences. And that's what we're going to do in the cybersecurity region next year, because this is a sort of an underrepresented region regarding climate services. I also want to say that we will keep you informed, updated about the plans, the organizations that we're going to do on the festival. But as a community, we want to invite you to give you the voice in the platform, to give suggestions. Okay, to give your suggestions. Your voice is really important. So if you have any ideas or plans that you would like to incorporate on our next event, so please feel free to share, contact us. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our distinguished speakers and panelists for our farewell session. We will first have Vladimir Đurđević from University of Belgrade. He's a meteorologist, really nice and huge expert in Serbia, who's also going to take us through the communication of climate science. Then we will have words from Ana Lopez-Gan, who is CEO and founder of eCatalyst. Yes, and also she is advisory board for climate change from European Commission. Further on, we have Roger Street joining us online. He's from CMCC and also an advisory board for Climate Europe 2 and the creator of the roadmap for climate services. Then we will hear online also from Mr. Yeah? Okay. Thank you. We will hear from Dionisio Perez Blanco, who is from CMCC, but also distinguished research fellow at the University of Salamanca. And then last but not least, we will hear some farewell words and closing remarks from Francisco Dobles Sieres, who is a coordinator of Climate Europe 2 from Barcelona Supercomputing Center. So, Vladimir, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming back after the lunch. Okay, my background is a climate modeler. Okay, I spend a lot of years sitting in front of the computer looking into the codes. But in one moment, by chance, I started to do this science communication about the climate change. So this presentation is about my experiences in that field. But I would like to start with this figure. Probably everybody here knows what this figure is. Okay, it's future pathway of our planet in terms of the temperature. And I think it is one of the most basic or most important climate services that we provide to the global society for humanity today, because we tell them how the planet will look like in the future in terms of temperature, depending on our decisions right now. But what I found fascinating about this figure is that The information that we provide is only 200 kilobytes. And the data size behind the figure, so many runs, integrations, hard disk, etc., is of order of petabytes. So we really produce a huge amount, the ocean of data, and we then squeeze it into one figure of 200 kilobytes and tell them, okay, look, you have several pets, you should choose something of this, okay? And we've done that back from the 70s up to now, okay? First, this coordinated efforts to provide this information to the humanity was in the 70s. And up to now, we didn't see almost any response to that information that we provide. So we provide crucial climate service, telling them that we're going to change the climate. And you cannot see many actions on this figure. And more ridiculous is if you put this figure in political context. Okay. It's really ridiculous, okay? So probably maybe there is some kind of miscommunication problem, okay? Who talked to whom, okay? How we are talking to the people who make decisions. So now I will start with my experiences about the whole this story. First, my binary experience. And first of all, we don't even provide many digits. We provide people, I mean, within the climate services, we provide only zeros and ones, okay? It's crazy, just 2 digits. And we have this whole story about the climate change in the future. I coming from the University of Belgrade. The group of the University of Belgrade had a long tradition of development of numerical weather and climate models back into the 70s. And part of my postgraduate studies was to develop coupled regional climate model, coupling the atmosphere and the ocean. And because of that, we became the members of this Cordex. Probably all of you know what is the Cordex, the Mediterranean Cordex dedicated to Mediterranean, because this Med Cordex is interested how the Mediterranean is going to change in the future. Even Serbia are not the future projections of SST in Mediterranean. You will find that one of the models for these projections coming from Belgrade. And the reason of that is that my thesis and my postgraduate studies in Belgrade. So I'm not also, I'm not innocent in terms of these petabytes, okay? I also contribute to these petabytes in the past, so also the whole group in Belgrade. But I also, in the last several years, I have some kind of other contributions that are not numbers and not ones and zeros, and I will talk about them. One of the first was the short movie about the climate change and the problem about the climate. The title of movie is Angry Face of Nature. You can find it on a YouTube, and it was produced by the Center for the Science Promotion, one of the partners of this project. And the movie is some kind of dialogue between me and little girl, what is happening with our planet and what we should do to make things better. And it's very interesting. The whole experience was very interesting because it's really, sometimes it's really hard to talk with the kids about the climate change, because you're telling them maybe in the future you will face much bigger problems than today. And I'm the one who will inform you about that and how the kids going to respond about it. So in that sense, it was a really nice experience to work with many people from Center for the Science Promotion, with the director Miloš Tomić and other people who prepared the script. We done it all jointly, so it was really nice. The second thing that I was done was the theater show, okay? And I done that in cooperation with a graffiti artist, Aleksandra Petković. The short name for her is TKV in Serbian, okay? Tiki, okay, Tiki. Okay, and we done it as some kind of podcast, okay, but in a theater, okay? I was the podcaster, she was sitting in her room making the graffiti, okay, and she made the graffiti from what she listened from that podcast. The title of show was Just One, because it was about just 1 degree of warming, okay? Sometimes it's very hard to explain to the people that planet is warmed by 1 degree, that we should take care about that. And also the best part of all this experience is all these people on the list, okay? Because you need to really have a group of people to support you to create this kind of theater play from scientific lecture. And the formal name of this is augmented lecture. Okay, it's some kind of scientific lecture that includes art in the lecturing people about some topic. It's a whole how to say, it's whole new concept of promoting science in artistic format. The next experience is climate capsule. You probably had a chance to check how the capsule looks like, but this is again the part of the crew. Again, all these collaborations, the very nice part of that is that you spend the time with creative people, the people who are really interested in these things, who are thinking all the day long how to communicate, what we can do, what not. And you can see in the background, the original climate capsule is in Venice. It's not in this inflatable. And for the promotion of the climate capsule in that city in Serbia, the outside temperature was 40 degrees, and inside the van it was like a 50 degrees. So you can imagine what experience was to enter inside and to see that figure and hear that temperature in the future in 2057 will be above 50 degrees, and you're really in the climate of above 50 degrees. So it was really nice experience to be part of this group and to create the climate capsule. And I'm sure that this is just the beginning of the story, because we have a long list how we're going to expand this capsule is something which is more bigger than a capsule itself. Another my experience, in one moment I became the part of artwork. Two artists from Swiss. They're really interested in the color of the sky. Okay, and in moment when they told me, I realized that we never measure the color of the sky. Even we have the instrument for that. The name of the instrument is a cyanometer. And their idea is to take a picture every few minutes for 30 years and to make an evidence how the color of sky will change in the future due to the climate change and other anthropogenic, let's say, activities. So the part of their work, this cycle that you see in the middle of the figure is animation of these photos. But the part of the work is that they interviewed the scientists around the world, asking them, what is your projection or prediction about how the color of the sky will change in the future? And I'm one of the guys who gave them that interview, because within the climate model, you don't have variable sky of the color. Maybe somebody should think about how we're going to parameterize this and produce the forecast of the sky color, okay? Because it's important. Every day when you go out of your house, you will face the sky and you will see the color, and nobody tells you which color you're gonna see. So it's really intriguing to thinking in that way, that sky of the color will change in the future. And actually, this machine who takes the photo every few minutes, it's on the roof of Museum of Contemporary Art in Belgrade, and hopefully we're gonna have this 30-year time lapse movie about the color. The next experience from my life is with the two colleagues from Faculty of Dramatic Arts. We started the initiative which is called Green Art Incubator. And what we are trying to do is to help the cultural and art organization to make them their work, let's say, more green, or how you're going to produce the movie and release less CO2 into the atmosphere during this process. Because one of the colleagues from Czechoslovakia, during one presentation, they show us the opening scene from Apocalypse Now. And if you watch that movie, you will see the forest burning like on big area. So that is not possible to do it anymore. Okay, so also the art and cultural institutions should try to reorganize themselves to be, let's call that more sustainable, but it's much bigger story than more sustainable. And for the end, I will introduce you to the climate horoscope. We posted climate horoscope just for fun on our LinkedIn page from our institution. So we announced on the LinkedIn page, okay, the Institute of Meteorology in Belgrade designed the climate horoscope. It's a new thing, and we have free signs. We don't have 12 signs. We have a cool, normal, and hot, and we've done that just for fun. But one of the major newspapers in Serbia took that from our LinkedIn page and they published it as a news. Like, okay, we have a new horoscope. Let's try to see which sign. But I'm not telling you how to find your sign. If you like it, it is also part of climate services. You can pay me some money, and I will tell you, I will tell you your side sign if you're interested. And also, what's happened that one of TV stations called me to their program to explain them the climate horoscope. So for me, it was a really nice and funny way how you can start communication about the climate. So you should tackle something which people sees and know from everyday life, like a horoscope. Everybody's interested in a horoscope, okay? But when you tell them, okay, there is not only Chinese horoscope and this Arabic horoscope and maybe some older horoscope, there is a climate horoscope. They're interested, okay, how I'm gonna find, am I cool, am I normal, or am I hot? I'm not about the climate scientists. They're more hot or cool or whatever, but we can calculate that. Okay, that was my experiences. Experiences that I have, because maybe it will trigger you, it will trigger inside you something that you start to think about how you can communicate your numbers and research in a different way. And I think that it is very inspiring, and hopefully in the next festival in Belgrade, I think that we will have much more to show you, especially in this kind of non-orthodox communication of the climate. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vladimir. This was really fun. I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions from Vladimir. We can have a couple of questions.
I don't take questions. I said for the climate horoscope, you should pay something.
Thank you, Vladimir, very much. So now we will move on to Elena. I will give you the floor to give your reflections of the festival and the role of climate services. Thank you.
Okay, so I don't actually have slides because I thought by the end of today probably we would have a bit of an information overload. So it was more, when I was approached by Jaro, it's really more to reflect on what I take away. And I think the first thing is to remember that this week we had the first European Union climate risk assessment published, and I think this is actually an important moment. And also, I wanted to put it in the timing and the context. At the moment in the European Union, we are actually in a critical time, both from a climate change impacts point of view. Europe is, as you know, warmed, more than the rest of the world, 2.2. But also that we will have elections in June. So I think, in a way, it's intentional that this report came out now, because in a way it is trying to inform and in some way create the argument why we really need to act quickly, particularly as a strong message for the next commission that will start their work in the autumn. And I think this is important because all of us are here, I think, are important to build on that work. And in fact, we are hosted by one of the institutions that was kind of key in creating the UCRA. And it's also important because at the same time, Europe was ambitious and deployed something called the mission adaptation. And we will hear in a moment Thomas speaking about the mission adaptation, where we're really trying to go beyond science and really make this a mission for everyone. And that's where, to me, climate services come in. Our services are needed by real people, by real sectors. And that mission adaptation, I mean, I am lucky in a way to be part of the mission giving technical assistance. And I was reflecting with Asun, who was part of the mission board originally. Yarrow as well was also involved. And even with the current mission board, who is also equally committed, that there are regions, 300 regions signed up because they think they tell you about in Valencia, the tropical nights, schools closing, because the temperatures are becoming really insufferable, the health impacts. or concern about how critical sectors are going to be really impacted because of sea level rise. The famous end user is not an end user, it's a region, it's a municipality, it's a farmer, it's a youth activist. These are the people that we have to connect with. And I think we heard, I mean, I really, really, really enjoyed the previous session on communication, by the way, because I think we have to build bridges with all these other people, all this other expertise. They're the experts on communication. We don't have to learn to be experts in communication. We have to talk to the people that are experts. There are other experts, or even before, the presentation on art, other ways of communicating. And as we know, and this is what I referred to earlier on the UCRA, we now know that there are some sectors that are really impacted. Only 2 weeks ago, there was a high-level event on climate and health. And really, I mean, the impacts are very pervasive. So we need to be there, providing our knowledge and supporting these sectors to adapt to the impacts. And as we heard, this is definitely, there's a huge element here about the mindset. And I think also the mindset of scientists. And last week I attended an event, it was called the TRAMI, which is basically they were reflecting on the 5 missions of the European Union, because we have the mission adaptation, we have the one on climate neutrality, cancer, oceans, and of course cities, and really, and soils and oceans. So they are actually, ironically, quite connected. And there, in a way, I heard a very, very good French scientist saying how she had actually done a project focused on pesticides, and where she was really trying to work with her scientists and their mindset for them to really understand what impact is. And we've all heard about the publish or perish. And I think, we heard earlier as well, the incentives that exist in the media, the incentives that exist in the science. So I think it is going to boil down to our vocation as scientists, to really have an impact with our science. And therefore, it is also our emotions. And I think I want to also reflect, I was lucky enough to attend a conference in Canada on adaptation futures. And talking about, memorable events, I went to plenty of sessions, plenty of good science, believe me, very, very good. Lots of adaptation pathways, modeling, you name it, cascade impacts, it was all there. And the one session that stays in my mind, it was a session organized by the Yukon tribe. All because what they allowed in that room, and that's exactly what the scientists said, the scientists in that room, some of them Western, us, basically because they were allowed to feel. They were allowed to feel that they actually did care. And I think we need to understand that there's no contradiction between being objective and caring about the work we do. So I think as we move now into the implementation, and I think we heard, the chair of working group 2 now, we are moving now into the action. Definitely. We really now have to use all our knowledge. It's not any longer about producing new knowledge. Of course, we will always do that, but it's also ensuring that there's an urgency in using that knowledge. We're talking about climate resilient development, which is basically implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and about transforming societies. And this goes really deep. At lunchtime, I was talking to Asun again, for example, we have to talk about societal transformation to such a deep extent. And they also talk about just transitions, but we also talk about just resilience. The impacts are also not going to be equally felt. So we have to be very aware of this societal aspect of the work we do. Also, I think this decision, I'm getting to the end of my reflections. Data, as you know, is a new gold. I think I'm actually very proud of being European, having a GDPR, so that then my data is mine. I think there's going to be a big issue about data and legitimate use of data and having the right frameworks for that data, how it's used and who it benefits. And also, I think we have to be aware of the the danger of infoxication, you know, how we translate that data. And I think partly the onus is on us to make our data accessible. And I think I was just reading the principles that are on climate services, and this is very much at the core of making that data transferable, accessible, visual. That was another discussions I had with a number of people in the room in the last few days, you know, making that data easily understandable. So I think in that sense, for example, we're now working in the mission, you know, trying to leverage on all the different mission projects and non-mission projects. So basically the challenge is how we can really use all the knowledge that we've accumulated and really put it to the use of that end user that I heard yesterday that should be at the center, creating the right narratives. So I think my last message is for all of us that are kind of working in climate services in one way or another, is that we have to open up the data, we have to make it accessible, we have to share that data, and the data, you know, in a way has to be co-generated with those that are going to use it, and they have to be involved from the beginning, because otherwise it will make no sense to them. You know, we need to see them as part of our research process, but, you know, get much more involvement from all the actors and the practitioners and all their knowledge and expertise. That was one of the key messages from Working Group 2, you know, that we have a type of knowledge, scientific knowledge, but there are other knowledges that are probably needed now, because we need absolutely everything to be put in the cooking pot, because we really are facing very, very different, you know, we've never been here before as humanity. So we need all the help and all the knowledge that we need. And I think one final comment that I think is, to me, is probably the most important. Data, technology, models, science, in a way, is a mean to an end as well. You know, we need to really think that we need to help now all of our sectors, all of our end users, which are farmers, which are youth, which are municipalities, you know, help them along the way so then they can prepare better, you know, and also envision a kind of better future under this changing climate. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elena. That was amazing. I love everything that you talked about, really. The open data, so the in emotions, a big part of talking to our community and listening to their stories too. So thank you. Next up, we have online Roger, who is going to take us through the roadmap of climate services and what's next. So Roger, the floor is yours. If you can hear us.
Thank you very much. You have my slides there, I believe. Thank you. I was asked to come in and talk about revisiting the EC, the European Research and Innovation Roadmap for Climate Services. And I put it here as a question, and do we want to revisit it? Is it needed to be revisited? And if so, what is next? And I thought it'd be, next slide, please. I thought it'd be good. I know there's a lot of people there that probably have a good idea of what the roadmap is, but I find sometimes we forget, and there's some people that weren't involved in understanding the roadmap. And it's really a framework that was developed to engender discussion. And it's discussion on exploring and finding, you know, shared solutions and pathways to enable that action that is needed using climate services. And we came up in that discussion that took place involving a number of stakeholders, a number of potential users. We came up with 3 really strong research challenges that we felt needed to be dealt with in order to further the development of climate services in Europe. And the first one was enabling the market growth. How could we enable that market growth? And and it got into really trying to look at the fact that what we were creating was a market, and what we're trying to stimulate is a market. So how do we enable that growth? And then what we also needed to do was build the market framework, the framework for that market that we wanted out there. And then we also needed to enhance the quality and relevance of the climate services. So there was three different challenges that we felt needed to be looked at. I'm not going to go into those three challenges. I really encourage people to look at that. I'm going to go to sort of look at the process and the understanding. Next slide, please. And what was really interesting was this. I look at it in terms of, there wasn't just the roadmap, which I thought was very important, but there has been subsequent activities that have brought forward different aspects that are different looks at these challenges. We had the position paper prepared by Climate Europe, which was based on a stakeholder workshop that was held in 2016, and the position paper came out in 2017. And I felt that each one of these is really important, and you really need to understand what each one of these different views or reviews or perspectives we're looking at. Climate Europe 2019 put out a series of recommendations for Horizon Europe framework program on research needs for climate modeling and climate services. Then there was the AeroNet for Climate Services in 2020, looked at future research needs in support of climate services. And then the latest, but I don't think it was the last, the latest that I'm aware of anyways, was the European Conference on Climate Adaptation in 2021, looked at your service, climate knowledge and information as an enabler for climate action. And it was really interesting to look at all four of these, and you found out that they complemented each other. They reinforced different solutions and different concerns that came out in the roadmap. But it also looked at it from the perspective of those that were engaged. Next slide, please. And it got down to looking at, I tried to pull together what I thought were the main challenges and barriers that were trying to be addressed. And this is not all of these are completely valid as they're stated here, but they are still existing. There's challenges and barriers. Knowledge and information are primarily developed based on a siloed climate hazard perspective, and have been developed based on climate science and various understandings of user needs. This was a major challenge that needed to be addressed, and it was picked up throughout those series of 5 assessments or perspectives. We made progress in some of these areas, but not in all of them. Available knowledge, information, and resources. There's a lot of concern that they're still failing to create a sufficient trust and to create an appetite for climate information, acting as and reinforcing barriers to picking up and pull for knowledge and information that supports climate action. I can remember doing some work in the United Kingdom about 10 years ago. No, I think it was about 12 years ago. And people were still using information from the TAR because they trusted it. They trusted it and they understood how to use it. And that was a real concern. And I think you'll find that different types of user communities are using knowledge that I don't think that we would feel comfortable with seeing them using, but that's what they feel comfortable doing. There is an ongoing need to increase effort to enhance the marketability and quality of climate services as perceived by those using and those that should be using climate services. And that's the real point here. It's really trying to build that value and the perception of value in those that are using and should be using climate services. Next slide, please. Some of the results of these assessments and the deliberations. They're assessments, but there's also deliberations. And as I said, most of them are, the recommendations are consistent with or built on those coming forward from the roadmap. And they're reflecting aspects that were the particular focus of the engaged community in producing the assessment or participating in that dialogue. What comprised successes in required action was really that needed to inspire and inform action. So there was this sharing of knowledge was very important. Inspiring action, including on transformational and transition. So we need that, we have to inspire action that includes not only transformational, but the transitions that will be necessary to address the climate, the climate actions, to inform and inspire climate actions. Creating and connecting and collaboration are really, really important. And these were seen to be essential to success in the required actions. And then the whole move, as was just mentioned by the previous speaker, of implementation. We're moving into, this is no longer just understanding impacts. We have to understand the implementation and what is involved in implementation. And central to most of these highlighted successes and required action is that need to reimagine that being provided and how they are being used. We have to get away from just looking at how they were used and how things were provided. We have to reimagine. And even going into the first presentation, how do we, is the communications going beyond numbers? We have to reimagine how we communicate the messages so that we can inspire and inform action. Next slide. As I mentioned, we are continuing to make progress. And in terms of identifying the identified challenges and gaps, we are making progress and need to continue to make progress on translating to enhance relevance and usability. This is really important, is that we have to think about how we can better and continue to improve how we're doing that as we engage different types of users and different types of disciplines, etc. How do we translate that information? And this is really builds on this aspect that we have to recognize better the diversity of users and diversity of their needs and capabilities. And that's really trying to find the appropriate balance, the use of in-person and digital frameworks, platforms, I should say. That is included in that. How do we do that? And we saw some of those examples in the previous presentation. And this whole reimagining what is being provided, available, and being used, knowledge and information that is really enabling, that are really enablers, I should say, and reflect societal and political priorities and agreed yet still evolving vision. And this is really important. That we're not just trying to do something to get to point B along the track. This is continually evolving. Those needs are continually evolving. The visions are continually evolving. The priorities are continually evolving. And therefore, that which we're providing has to be evolving at least at the same speed. And working with national or regional knowledge and information platforms as an effective way of enhancing reach, impact, and knowledge sharing is really important to continue to make that progress. And that they are conduits into that, into those different users and recognizing the different capabilities, etc. Next slide, please. Again, recognizing the nature and role of collaboration required across science, policy, and practice, and humanitarian processes are really important if we want to deliver the sustainable and just climate action and lifestyles. This includes enabling integration of knowledge. Climate information is necessary, but insufficient in order to develop, in order to deliver, inspire and deliver climate action. So it has to come from multiple sources. So the pot that it's going into has to be able to integrate. You can't, so are the climate information and data that we're providing has to be usable and therefore has to be integrated with other sources of knowledge. And we have to, in order to do that, and as you know, as you're mixing things in a pot, you have to know what is and what is not working within that pot, and really understand this through you understanding and articulating this in the nature and scope of different users or decision makers' journeys. These are more than just case studies. Case studies are interesting, but they don't really provide us with the information that we really need if we want to get at and understand and take action. And this is really trying to look at these and how do we co-design, co-producing, and co-evaluating. Next slide, please. Now, as I said, one of the things we also need to do is really look at that progress needs to create and sustain a community and an environment capable of that inspiring and informing the required climate action, not only today, but into tomorrow. And this is what are coordinating and networking that are essential to effective knowledge sharing, building trust and capacity. You look at what Climate Europe and Climate Europe 2 are doing through the festivals, et cetera, and that's trying to get these networks going and really trying to build those. And we have made considerable progress in that way in terms of also bringing user communities and climate service community closer together. And I think that this is something that we need to continue to do. And does this mean we need, is Climate Europe 3 really needed? Or is there other, does this go on beyond that? And we have to really invest in natural, physical, social, and engineering sciences and humanities. This is not just investing in climate science. We have to invest across those to deliver and enhance the level and quality of that research and innovation that are supporting climate services. And we have to really look at this. You can call it a value chain, but some people that know me, I call it a value web. And we have to improve the roles of all those people that are involved in that web, and to enhance the democratization and sharing and access to knowledge is really important. Last slide, please. What we're really looking at here, I think, and when I look back and start to look forward, are these challenges and gaps still valid, well-defined, or evolving? I think they are, but do you think they are? Which and to what extent are these currently being addressed? There's a lot of investment going on within Horizon Europe, but at the national level and internationally in addressing a number of the gaps and challenges that have been there. And how are these being addressed? And are we looking at the past to try and address these gaps as they were seen in the past, or are there new challenges or emerging gaps that we should really be focusing on that are evolving from those? I believe it is time for a new assessment. It's, we started in 2014 to do the roadmap. I think it's now 10 years on. I think we need to do that. And what has been accomplished and what is still needed in some of those areas, I should say, and what are the emerging challenges that we really need to look back, and how should the community be involved in addressing these challenges? And I think that this is something that needs to be looked at. And I believe that the Climate Europe process, has the potential to do this and set up at least this next assessment or a continuing assessment process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roger. So I think this is really, really fantastic. Yeah, you're bringing that there's a time for new assessment, but also bringing up the value of climate services and also importance of collaboration, speaking to our communities and communicating too. I just wanted to mention that we will have time to bring out questions and also your feedback from the audience after the last talk. And that is from Dionisio, who is going to also speak online. So I will invite him to speak about transformative approaches regarding water challenges and services.
Okay. I hope you hear me now. So thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I have been tasked with preparing a presentation on transformation and adaptation and how this can be integrated into water management services, how we can convey the tools so that decision makers can implement this transformation that we are needing. So before I start talking about the tools proper and how we can transform these services and achieve the transformation we are all looking for, I thought it would be only good to talk about why, but going back to the fundamentals and trying to understand together why we need this transformation. I think this is necessary because after some years working with decision makers, I still bump into some people who negate the need for this transformation. And I think it's good to reflect on that before we move on to these transformation services themselves. So for many years, hundreds of years, even millennia, I mean, if we look at the older infrastructures, we have been relying on a similar approach to supply water and satisfy the needs that we have for life, but also for economic growth and some amenities. This has been basically a story of supply. Whenever we needed the water, we just built new water works that made the water available. And this story of supply has been actually quite successful in harnessing the potential of water resources for economic growth, economic development, and welfare growth. So many people ask, and I see there's a reason to ask that, but there's also a reason to answer yes. The idea is whether we need this transformation. Okay, I'm an economist, so I'm clearly biased here, but to me, the answer is pretty much clear, and it has to do with the cost of this conventional supply approach. If you take a look at the cost of water resources in an area like southern Spain, in this case, we are talking about the Segura River Basin in Spain as an example, and you take a look at the cost of providing water in this area, you can see how these costs are increasing, and they are exponentially increasing. This means that making water available for users at the beginning via water works such as dams or canals was cheap, relatively cheap. Also, even when we introduced the water transfers, this water was, I mean, expensive at the beginning, but still cheap, relatively cheap. Users could pay it. But as soon as you start to incorporate into the mix the new supply technologies that we are mainstreaming now into the policy mix, the costs just escalate exponentially. And that should make us reflecting about the need for this transformation. We cannot continue relying on this supply approach, or at least not only on this supply approach. Supply is important, obviously, we need the water, but we also need to start managing the water better. And this is taking us to a new paradigm, which is focused on the management of demand and working with nature. We are talking about new instruments such as, well, not so new, but I mean, we are starting to talk about them more often, such as nature-based solutions, quotas, pricing, voluntary agreements, etc. The problem with these instruments is that they require a paradigm change, and not only by name, but also in practice. These tools, instead of increasing supply, redistribute the water. And this is quite more challenging than just making more water available to users. Before, we just needed to build a new reservoir, which was potentially costly, but in the end, the user will be happy. However, when we are talking about managing water demand, we have to deal with the fact that some people will be left better off and some others will be left worse off. So there will be winners and losers. We need also economic assessment, which is a discipline with which water managers and also stakeholders have not been historically used to deal with. And as a result of that, we need to update our tools and adapt them. And by tools, I mean models and services. And we need to adapt decision-making as well. And perhaps this last step is the most challenging of all. So I'm talking about, I mean, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about some reflections I've made upon receiving the task of preparing the presentation by Jaros Demisiak. And these reflections build on a series of projects in which we have been working together with the colleagues from CMCC. And basically, I'm going to reflect on what these projects are teaching us. And I'm going to start by the improvements that we have been making on the decision-making tools or services that the stakeholders and in particular decision makers are using. We have been capable of incorporating into the conventional tools that decision makers have been using the economic analysis. And this is something that we have been doing for many years already, but these tools are becoming increasingly sophisticated. As you know, decision makers, and in many cases they still do, have been relying mostly on hydrologic models for taking decisions. And in the case of Spain, for example, this is still the case. River-based authorities, they mostly use an hydrological model or a decision support system that is based on an hydrological model, Aquatool, to inform the decisions. And some other aspects are sometimes, if not disregarded, they are treated to a lower extent, and economics is one of them. Nonetheless, we have been providing more and better tools to conduct economic assessments in the water sector, and these tools are increasingly used. These tools, for example, allow us to assess the impacts of a drought at a local level, but also at a national or international level or regional level. We have been also incorporating via interdisciplinary research disciplines into the economic analysis and hydroeconomic analysis. For example, in this case, I'm showing you an assessment that we recently did in the context of the Transcend project, the Horizon Europe project that we are coordinating, in which basically we are incorporating remote sensing data from Copernicus into the hydroeconomic assessment that we are doing, so that instead of relying on water use estimates, we rely on the actual water use, or at least a much more accurate estimate of the actual water use. And as you can see, the differences are non-trivial. By incorporating these results, we are making information much more accurate, but we are also avoiding potential biases in decision-making, because as you can see here in this graph, if you take a look at the blue shaded area, this is the cost of a specific policy, in this case, a buyback in Spain. When we account for remote sensing, and as you can see, the cost differs significantly from the traditional estimates that have been used historically. So science can contribute to better informed science, and the services that are developed using this science can contribute to better informed policies. Also, we have been incorporating to economic analysis some tools that were more characteristics of ecological models, such as ensembles. But I mean, I don't want to take much time about from the science side. The thing that is really concerning me, and where I would like to spend the rest of the time I have for this presentation, is on how these new tools, economic tools, and also hydroeconomic tools with remote sensing, et cetera, are contributing to develop better services, but more importantly, how they are being used by stakeholders. Because as I said at the bottom of the slide, it's important that the tools that we develop are user-friendly and usable. And this is something in which we have improved significantly over the years. But they also have to be actually used. And this is something in which, at least from the economics standpoint, we have not been that successful. We have created tools that are very, they look nice, they are user friendly, but in the end, when it comes the time of deciding what policy we are going to implement, the stakeholders tend to be, they are risk averse, decision makers are risk averse, and understandably, perhaps they resort to the conventional services that they have been using for years, if not decades. So it's difficult to mainstream new services into actual decision making. It's difficult to make them truly actionable. Here I want to reflect briefly on why this is so difficult. Well, first of all, when we are talking about managing demand, we are incorporating, as I mentioned before, some non-trivial challenges that are not easy to address. For example, I talk about the fact that by managing water demand and reallocating water, we are going to have winners and losers. And even in the cases where we only have losers, as is the case in this representation, in the case of a drought in Emilia-Romagna in Italy, in which we are applying, in this assessment, we are trying to see what are the consequences of a specific management tool for that drought. We see that by applying demand instruments, one potential consequence is that we are going to have inequality. And this is something that we may experience also with supply instruments, but it was not as much perceived because, well, all of the users were left better off in this case. Some of them, if not all of them, are left worse off, and in some cases, much worse off than in other cases. So this is going to pose a problem, a significant problem that decision makers have to deal with, and it's not easy to do that. So that is something that can deter change and transformation and adaptation, because people, stakeholders, decision makers, understandably, perhaps, want to avoid being in this situation. Another problem is that when we manage demand, just like the case when we manage supply, but in this case, perhaps even more so because we don't have a lot of evidence still, we are facing a lot of uncertainty. And this uncertainty in some extreme cases can lead to non-linearities, non-linear change. And non-linear change is something that policymakers, at least when the non-linear change is negative, don't like that much. Here I'm showing you an example of a research that we did in the Piedmont region in Italy while I was working at CMCC. They were asking us to see what would be the impact of a pricing policy that aligned with the Water Framework Directive. And we did so. We assessed the impact of increasing the water charge for different crops. And they were especially concerned about the rice fields. As you know, rice fields are a key feature of the landscape is the Piedmont region. They appreciated them, they liked them, and even if they are very much water intensive, they wanted to keep them because they are part of their historical heritage. And the problem that we saw is that when we increased the water charge, there was a point in which the rice fields essentially disappear because of how much water intensive they were. They couldn't pay for the water charge. They were very concerned about that. And one reason why this policy has not been implemented yet, despite lots of assessments, is that because they don't know where this non-linearity, this disappearance of the rice fields is going to be triggered. And that's a concern that they want to avoid, and therefore the transformation is not implemented. So as you can see, we have multiple barriers to transformation. All these barriers are leading to transaction costs. Essentially, transaction costs are the institutional cost of implementing a change. Usually when we assess a policy, we tend to look at their costs and benefits, but we look at the costs and benefits for users. We don't perceive or we don't assess what this cost may be for institutions. And this transaction cost can be political costs because the policymakers want to be re-elected, but they can also emerge from lobbying. Some water users with vested interests may interfere the decision-making process, and through that interference, through, I don't know, for example, demonstrations, we had some of them recently, they short-circuit the logical path that the decision-making process will follow otherwise. And these transaction costs have not received sufficient attention. They are typically ignored by scientists like me, and they are quite relevant. They are very relevant. Actually, they are at the core of some of the decisions that are being taken in water and climate adaptation policies. So how can we deal with this? I mean, obviously, I don't have a cure-for-all solution. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, I will have presented that to the Commission or other key actors already. But we are working on developing some solutions that help us to achieve this transformation that we are all looking for. So some of the solutions that I'm going to discuss here are co-creation and serious games, which are an approach that we have been following recently. What do we pursue with co-creation and serious games? Well, basically what we are trying to do in the context of some of the European projects in which we work is work with the stakeholders in the development of the tools and services that we are going to put at their disposal. So essentially, we try to make the tools relevant by developing the tools together with them. This cannot be done in a straightforward way because many of the stakeholders and decision makers are not modelers. They are not experts in hydrology or economics, or at least not in all the topics that are required to prepare these sophisticated tools that support decision making. But they understand the key outcomes of the tools. They understand the scenarios. They understand the key drivers, and they can help us or provide guidance on the development of these tools, which is essentially what we are looking for with these projects. We are looking for their support, we are looking for their feedback, and we are looking for putting all this together into models that are actually used. This is one example of some serious games that we have been implementing. Essentially, in the serious games, what we do is simplify a very complex model, like the model that you have in the left-hand side, in which we have multiple systems. In each system, we have multiple models, so we build ensembles. There's a lot of cascading uncertainties. Interpreting these results is sometimes not easy for stakeholders. For most stakeholders, actually, is very complicated. Some of them may be hydrologists and they don't know about economics. Some of them may be economists, they don't know about hydrology, and understanding all the logical features that the model has may be completely outside of their day-to-day work, and they may not be interested. But we can transform via serious games all this complexity of the model into, like you can see here, a card game, basically a board card game in which stakeholders just play with cards, and these cards are they are a simple representation of the model. So basically, all the scenarios, all the decisions they take, they have been previously modeled with our modeling framework, and whatever decision they are taking and the consequences of this decision is being informed by the model. Only they don't see the model. So they are not using the model directly. And in this way, we hope that by the end at the end of this project, these models will become much more actionable, or at least easy to use for stakeholders. We have had a few successful experiences already in the context of our Horizon 2020 project, in which we managed, for example, to make river basins in Spain, but also in Lebanon and in Tunisia. It was a PRIMA project, to make use of the models that we developed. In some other cases, we had 7 living labs. In some other cases, we are still working, but in 3 of them, I can say that this approach led to actionable science that is actually used in decision making. So we created services that were actually used by decision makers. So I think that's this is a story of success in one of the projects that we have been coordinating, and as a result of that, we are trying to escalate this approach now to other research we are conducting. Okay, so some concluding remarks before I finish. Well, I would be very brief here. It's true that we need better services, and as a modeler and a scientist, we try to focus here. We tend to focus here very often. So whenever we are asking for a project or whenever we are preparing a research paper, we try to talk about the improvement in the model, the improvement in the service, how this can provide more interesting results for stakeholders and therefore can inform better policies. But it's true that this is not enough. I mean, not only by creating a better model, you are going to have this model used and inform decision making. We need to make sure that we engage decision makers into the development of these models, and that requires co-creation efforts, knowledge networks, you can name it as you want. We need to make sure that the outcomes from these co-creation efforts are not only usable, but used. I mean, that's to me the true meaning of actionable science. And then finally, we have to make sure that we encourage ownership. So that means that the stakeholders feel that the model is their model, and therefore they appropriate the model and update it where needed. And also we have to make sure, and this is critical, this is quite difficult, and for that I honestly don't have the answer, but we're trying to work on that. We're working on that right now. We need to make sure that they are adaptable. I mean, we have to create better services. We have to make sure that these services are used by decision makers to take more informed decisions, but we have to avoid that decision makers lock into these new services that we are providing. And this is something that has happened in the past, and is very understandable. I mean, when people switch to a new tool and they start using it, they get experts in this tool, and it's quite difficult to make them shift to another tool later on. So we have to at least encourage and try to make stakeholders and scientists adaptable and capable of shifting to superior alternatives, superior services when these are made available. And oops, that's all from my side. Thank you so much for your time. And in case you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really interesting. I would actually love to give the floor to our audience. If you have any questions for our panelists. Yes.
Yes, hello. This is Quentin Lejeune from Climate Analytics. I have a question for Roger Street, if he's still listening to us. Is he still online? Well, I guess, all right. Then I'll keep my question. Thanks.
Thank you. Charlotte Pascoe from UKRI. So this is a question maybe you can answer, but something for the room to think about. We've spoken a lot throughout this few days about co-creation and really finding out about the users, but how can we scale up those activities? Because it's difficult to do that for every individual user as a climate service.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all inspiring keynotes. First of all, Elena, thank you for having been with us from the beginning, and thank you for your excellent thoughts. And Dionisio, thank you for a fresh view on the climate services. I think those keynotes were quite connected. I don't know whether you got the same red line that I've seen, right? Elena was saying about something like servitizing. Climate services are a way of empowering the users, right? Breaking down something which otherwise would not be accessible to them. So empowering them with knowledge, insight, and helping them to do. But what is most difficult is this change, right? The change, how we are making decision, how this is translated into the practice. And there was a nice metaphor from Dionisio, right? See, when he spoke about the water infrastructure and the initial state, like we supplied a lot of water by building the infrastructure, the supply side. This is exactly what happened in climate services, right? And now we are on the stage where we have developed Exxon infrastructure. There's a lot of interesting functionality available and data. It's all there. But why does the climate services are less used or not as much as we would like to is because the people don't like the change in the first, the way how the decisions are made, or they don't like the solution that are propelled by those changes, right? So it's more something on the opposite side. So we need to really design some services that look into how to overcome those barriers. The user side is critically important. And Dionisio's talk was an invitation for climate services community to reach out to other sub-communities of hydrological services, meteorological services, look together where we stand, learn from one another, and perhaps create a new generation of services that will not be called climate services, but resilience or transformative services, right? This is what we need. And that means we need to look into more the downstream part of the value chain, and not only the input of the climate, but really what it means across the different risks. And that also means looking into communicating and engaging tools like empowering the users with serious games. We have earlier heard about climate storylines. So it's basically the same, probably the same message. Serious game is putting you in a place to imagine that you are in charge and you need to do something, which is very similar to climate storylines that are adding more empathy and more contextual information behind. So I found these three keynotes extremely connected, right, in the messages that were provided. And perhaps to answer Roger's question, I think the roadmap is still perfectly well in place in terms of principles, but we need also some priority. And I have seen his call for assessing what has been achieved. We really need to have a closer eye on how much we have achieved on different aspects, and then target our activities towards the areas where we are progressing less compared to the others. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Are there any more questions, feedback that you would like to bring up to the floor? If not, I would actually like to ask you a question. If there's anyone who would like to give feedback on this first festival, or bringing up new ideas for our next events, also online, but the next festival too. Anyone from the audience? Natalie and then Elena, please.
I think as an idea, I think really building on what Jara just said, I think maybe like in the next festival, you could actually have co-creation workshop with the end users. So it's a dialogue with the end users. So for example, you could have a workshop on health and have people from the health sector, and then you pitch to them and then they give you. So really, like, I think that, because I really think that that's the moment where we are, and that they will make explicit to you the value of what has been done. The same with farmers. I mean, we are in a very critical time. They're demonstrating, and yet they are at the forefront of the impacts. They will be the sector, one of the most impacted already. Well, already, I mean, the drought in Italy, in Spain, in Northern Europe. So that's one idea, is can we reach out to them? Or even, I think someone said at one point in one of the workshops, we go to them. I mean, maybe we don't have to wait for them to come to us. We should also be willing to go to their spaces as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. I was involved in the first Climate Europe project, and it's felt like a reunion, getting to say hello and re-engage with the community. It's such a vibrant network of people, and I feel really energized from the conversations that have been happening. And I just want to applaud everything that you've done that's been so engaging. And I really enjoyed the artistic intervention. I say maybe enjoys the wrong word. It was quite powerful. It really impacted me. For my mind, the things that brought me the most joy from the first two Climate Europe festivals were the things that made them more like a festival to me, like celebration and joy. I think I've heard so many people saying they feel hopeless, that they feel depressed, and we need to take our need for action and do something with it that's joyful. I feel like engaging with users in a way that makes us all appreciate the action we could take. So artistic intervention, talking to local users, maybe bringing the food alive like we did in the first festival with local producers, talking about their experience with different crops as you're eating it. It really brings it to life. I'd love to see that in the next festival, and I really, really hope I can come.
Thank you very much to both of you, really. I completely agree that the co-creation process is really important, but also having fun and joyful, and also including art too. And I would like to emphasize that we will bring a lot of art in Belgrade and bring up the festival spirit too. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you there. And now for, sorry, yes, please.
Hello, just if I may share my view and some kind of recommendation. I really enjoyed the festival. I really enjoy these interactive sessions. The only thing that I would like to recommend is that next time we have a chance to go to all of the sessions, not to choose between two, because it was a very difficult choice to make, to choose which one of the two sessions to join and then to take part of it. So next time it will be really nice if all the participants can join every individual interactive sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. It's really needed. So yeah, I wrote down everything, and I really look forward to seeing you all in Belgrade, hopefully. And now with concluding remarks, we will hear from Paco. So if you can join us here, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bijania. I don't plan to speak for too long, because there have been lots of speeches, and the festival, as Nathalie said, was never intended as a place to speak, but to a place to listen and to celebrate, to really be positive about the kind of things that we have. So we shouldn't forget that we are in Europe, that we have the tools to do things, that we have access to the data, to the scientists, that we can complain, and it's great to complain. I come from Catalonia, people complain all the time. It's great. It's coming from southern Spain, where people don't complain, they just sing. It's a big change, but it brings you a bit more to reality. But somehow it's important to realize where we are. Let's not lose perspective. So it's true that lots of people are very pessimistic about climate and climate change and what we can do. And we are privileged. So we are here because we believe that we can do something, and that there are lots of people that are out there that can really take advantage of what we are doing here, what is being done by the mission, what is being done by many other activities in Europe, both at the national and international level. So we need to celebrate. We need to celebrate that we can do these things and that we are privileged in the world to really take advantage of the of combating the problems that we are having. We shouldn't forget all those that can't do what we are doing here, and the availability of tools and knowledge and experience that we are enjoying in Europe. And that's something that in Climate Europe too, we are somehow trying to bring to the fore. As my colleagues from the anthropological side remind me continuously, it's important to be aware of how powerful we are, and it's important to be aware that there are lots of people who are not powerful, and that we have to always have them present and involve them, their needs into our discussions and developments. So equity is one of the key words in the project. It's not there just to tick a box and keep the Commission happy. There is a real belief that we can change things. And I was discussing with Werner yesterday, and I was telling him that one of the really important outcomes of a project like Climate Europe 2 is to make the natural scientists aware of the biases, preconceptions, misjudgments that we're having, and also to bring a few social scientists a bit closer to us and to let them know that they are very welcome, that they are very much needed. And they also have lots of things to learn from natural scientists. And that this is all very important to really pave the roads for the standardization of climate services. Climate adaptation is being standardized, is really going all the way down to many aspects that have to do with adaptation in the real world, but climate services is not. And that this is our opportunity to have a saying for setting up the minimum requirements that all climate services will have in the future in Europe and also beyond Europe. I'm not very good at praising myself or praising our community, but we have to be aware that what we are doing in Europe is very unique. So I go to the Commission and they ask me, oh, what are the Americans doing? And what are the Australians doing? They are miles, a massive distance behind us. And it's not a matter of resources. It's a matter of mindset. I think someone was talking about mindset today. No, it was you, Lena. The mindset in Europe is completely different. And that's what allows us to take advantage of instruments like the mission on climate adaptation and other missions, which is something that we would like to also engage with. All the national networks that are being built, the instruments like all the different activities that the Commission is really funding and pushing, and with all its errors and mistakes and drawbacks and the interests, things are happening in Europe at a scale that they are not happening anywhere in the world. So we have a responsibility to really show that this is possible, that things can be changed from inside out, and that we can really do something in, well, projects like Climate Europe 2, in which we can really help society to make things better, even if it's just a tiny bit, that there would be already a good justification. Climate Europe 2 is the project that is focusing a lot on standardization. Climate services haven't been standardized so far. We have gone a long way in the first 1.5 years of the project in building a community, but also in setting up a path for a roadmap for the standardization of climate services. This is moving very fast, and we really count on you, the project partners, but especially on the community to really engage with us, make sure that we are taking into account all those that should have a saying, engage with many other aspects, journalists, architects, all those that are not the usual suspects in our community. Engage even more with the mitigation community, because climate services is not for adaptation. Climate services is an instrument to address anything, any problem that is climate sensitive, and mitigation is one of them. And I think that was enough. I just wanted to be inspiring and at least to be positive in the sense that things are here in our hands, to waiting for us to change it. And let's not forget that we are privileged. And on that note, I would like to finish with saying a massive thank you to the CMCC colleagues and all those colleagues who participated in the program committee that made the organization of the festival a success, in my opinion. At least it was for me. And also to remind everyone that there will be many more events coming up. Webstivals, for instance, every 6 months, and the festival in Belgrade that, yeah, no pressure on you, but it's, I'm sure there will be even a bigger success than the one here. And yeah, long life to arts and science as well. So strong. Thank you very much. Thanks, Yaro. Thanks, Mauro, and your team. And yeah, thanks for all of you for coming over.